We will now be reading chapter 25. Then again, Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah, and she bare him Zimran, and Jokshan, and Medan, and Midian, and Ishbak, and Shua, and Jokshat began Sheba, and Dadan, and the sons of Dadan were Ashurim, and Letushim, and Leumimim, and the sons of Midian, Ephath, and Epher, and Hanok, and Abida, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah. And Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac. But unto the sons of the concubines, which Abraham had, Abraham gave gifts, and sent them away from Isaac his son, while yet he lived eastward unto the east county. And these are the days of the years of Abraham's life which he lived, 160 and 15 years. Then Abraham gave up the ghost, and died in a good old age, an old man, and full of years, and was gathered to his people. And his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, which is before Mamre, the field which Abraham purchased of the sons of Heth. There was Abraham buried, and Sarah his wife. And it came to pass, after the death of Abraham, that God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac dwelt by the well Lahorioi. Now these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, bare unto Abraham. And these are the names of the sons of Ishmael, by their names, according to their generations. The firstborn of Ishmael, Nebajoth, and Kedar, and Adbeel, and Mibsam, and Mishma, and Duma, and Massa, and Hadar, and Tema, Jetur, Nephish, and Kedemah. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names, by their towns, and by their castles, 12 princes according to their nations. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. And he gave up the ghost and died, and was gathered unto his people. And they dwelt from Havilah unto Shur, that is before Egypt, as thou goest towards Assyria. And he died in the presence of all his brethren. And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian, of Pad-Anaram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold unto Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And the boys grew. And Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau, because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob sought pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, Free me, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, rose up, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Summarizing chapter 25, it starts off with Abraham marrying another woman named Keturah. She has 6 children for him, and that part details the lineage of Abraham and Keturah. Verse 5, Abraham left his inheritance to Isaac, and only gave gifts to the sons of his concubines, and then sent them away from Isaac. Abraham died at 175 years old. Isaac, Ishmael, and Abraham's other unnamed sons buried him in Ephron's field. In chapter 23, verse 19, Abraham buys a burial plot from the Hittites and buries Sarah there because she died first. He bought the space big enough for him to be buried too, and his children understood that's where he wanted to be. Chapter 25, verse 12 details Ishmael's lineage. He has 12 children, and in verse 16, those 12 children are called the 12 princes according to their nations. Ishmael lived 137 years. Verse 19, Isaac was 40 when he took Rebekah as a wife. Rachel was barren. Chapter 25, verse 21. She was barren just like Sarah was deemed barren. The Lord granted Isaac's prayer. Rachel finally conceived. In verse 22, Rachel had a difficult pregnancy, and she asked the Lord why. Rachel was the first woman so far to go directly to God to answer a problem, especially about her pregnancy. And that's the other thing. Sarah had a problem conceiving, but instead of her going to God, she invited another woman, brought him to her husband, and she got pregnant, Hagar. But Rachel asked God herself, what is going on? Says something about her personality. So God told Rachel that she had twins and that these twins would produce two nations of people, that one nation would be stronger than the other, and that the older will serve the younger. The first baby boy, it was confirmed that she had twins. She ended up having twin boys, and just like Eve, the first baby boy was covered in red hair, and he was called Esau. The second baby grabbed Esau's heel on the way out, and he was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 when they were born. This is in verse 26. Esau hunted. Esau was loved by Isaac, and Isaac ate his venison, or the result of his hunting. Jacob was defined as a plain man. He stayed in tents, and Rebekah loved him. Verse 29. Jacob was cooking stew. Esau came in hungry and tired, and he asked Jacob for food. Just sidebar right here. This is before refrigerators or microwaves. So if you were hungry and somebody already had food, you would be trying to beg for some food because there's no snacks, there's no pantry. There's none of that yet. So Esau was hungry and tired. He asked Jacob for food. Jacob said he'd give him the food, but he wanted Esau's birthright. Esau said he was so hungry. What would this birthright, what good would this birthright do to me? I'm already hungry. I might starve to death. And so now he was called Edom. He's got a little nickname. That's being African American. It's a it's a thing I notice about us. We give nicknames for everything. There's a lot of nicknames in this Bible. When Abraham was instructed to sacrifice Isaac, and it became clear that God had his full compliance, that place was called Jehovah Jireh, a nickname for the spot. When King Abimelech and Abraham had an agreement that Abraham wasn't lying to him about the servant stealing his well that he dug himself, that agreement, where that agreement was made, it was called Beersheba. So now we're back here at chapter 25, verse 29, and Esau's being called Edom because he's so hungry. He's so hungry, he's give up his birthright. So Jacob asked Esau to promise his birthright before he would give him any food. Esau agreed and despised his birthright. And despise just means to look unfavorably or treat as negligent. So he was negligent about his birthright because he was so hungry. And that could be the cause for the nickname. Okay, so additional things I would like to highlight. A lot of the story about Sarah centered around her not being able to have children, right? And God kept promising Abraham over and over again that he would be a father to many nations. But he had one child by Sarah, one child by Hagar, and that child was almost like it didn't count because Sarah wanted Hagar and Ishmael gone. So he had one son most of his life. So Sarah dies. Abraham meets Keturah, who gives him 6 children, 7 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Keturah was mentioned twice in the Bible. Verse 1, or she's mentioned twice so far in the Bible, because we haven't gone to the next verse, the next chapters, but so far, verse 1 and verse 4, this woman gave this man 6 children, and most of his life he's been wanting to be a father of many nations. He's been promised to be a father of many nations. And once he gets a woman that gives him 12 children, in verse 5, he left his inheritance to Isaac only. In verse 6, he gives gifts to the sons of the concubines. He didn't even give any money to the concubines. Didn't leave anything for Keturah. Didn't leave anything for Keturah's 6 children, 7 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Gave her nothing. Zilch. He only left an inheritance for Isaac. And then in verse 10, Abraham was buried with Sarah. So that sometimes as women, it can be, sometimes society, this world, if you don't listen to God and you don't get into this Bible, your fertility, the amount of children that you have, if you have children at a certain time, the world will get in your head, make you feel some kind of way. But if we look at this, we look at this, Abraham was a father of many nations already. He just didn't honor them the same way he honored Sarah, who he loved. And Sarah only had one, and she didn't have him until she was 90. So just something to keep in mind about all this. There is beauty in fertility and child rearing, but there's also this can also happen as well, where she's only mentioned twice after she actually came through on the promise of him being a father of many nations. She's only mentioned twice and then got no inheritance for her children. Also, it's ironic that Rebecca was also deemed barren. She was also deemed fair and very beautiful, just like Sarah. Beautiful woman to look at. No children. The word barren, the most used terms that have a specific, how can I say this? Terms have more than one definition. The most popular definition is not the only definition for a term. Yeah. Barren. The most popular definition of barren is incapable of reproduction. But barren also means simply not producing, simply not reproducing. And barren also means never been pregnant or haven't been pregnant recently. So barren means more than just incapable. Barren just means not produced anything, have not had a pregnancy. That's all barren means, is just not having one. It isn't a, as we see, Rachel and Sarah both were deemed barren, and they both were able to conceive a pregnancy. So barren just means you haven't had one yet. Doesn't mean you can't. And Rebecca, when she got pregnant, she was pregnant with twins, just like Eve. Rebecca had a difficult pregnancy, but she's the first woman who went to God seeking information for a problem. She's the first woman so far mentioned. From Eve all the way to now. She's the only woman that is mentioned so far as going to God. And she had a problem with her pregnancy. She went to God. When Sarah had a problem with her pregnancy, she introduced Hagar to her husband. God told Rebecca that she had twins that would produce 2 nations of people. One would be stronger. The eldest will serve the youngest. She ended up having twins, Esau and Jacob. Jacob tricked Esau out of his birthright. And the birthright is the inheritance. And the custom during this time was that the oldest son would receive the inheritance. His birthright, the reason why this inheritance was Esau's was he was born with it. That's why it's called his birthright. Choosing not to value inherited gifts correctly may be used incorrectly. It says Esau despised his birthright, and despise means to look down on with respect, to regard as negligible or worthless, to not value properly. And as I said earlier, terms, words have multiple definitions, and the most popular definition is not the only one. So despising it, regarding it as worthless, or to avoid it, may all be considered encompassed with that one term. But lexicon is so complicated, and that's why it's important to read the Bible with the dictionary and to maybe even have a couple of versions of the Bible available. The New International Version is a very good one. It tells the Bible in plain English. Well, I appreciate you reading with me until this far. I look forward to seeing you for chapter 26.